I decided to surprise my bestie while my husband left for a work trip, only to uncover they'd been in a secret relationship for 4 years. So I, 38 female, and my husband, 40 male, have been together since I was 20, and he 22. We have one child together who is 17, male. I have known my best friend, 38 female, since we were 11. We'll call my bestie Sarah and my hubby Joe. Sarah and I don't get to see each other in the way that we used to, as about 6 years ago, she moved to a different province. She is roughly 3 hours away now. We text bi-daily at the least, and usually video chat 2 times a week with a glass of wine and weekly recaps. Suffice to say we are, or were, still very close despite the distance life has dealt us. Now, Joe travels a lot for work, and it's not uncommon for him to be gone for a week at a time here and there. He usually leaves on a Saturday or a Sunday and checks into his hotel so he is fresh-faced on Monday. He's always home on weekends. On this particular Wednesday, he said he was going to leave that Friday instead, as he had some prep work to do prior to Monday, and just wanted to allow himself enough time to do so without stressing last minute. I didn't think much of it and told him it makes sense. I looked forward to having the house to myself for the weekend as my son was going to his best friends to game for the weekend, as they often do. Friday rolls around, and my boy comes home from school, packs his things and heads out. All is good there. Joe's flight was at 8:40 p.m. so we still got to enjoy dinner together before he left for the airport. He kisses me, and leaves. The house is quiet, too quiet. I get some tidying done, have a relaxing bath, and tuck in with some Netflix. Life's good. I wake up Saturday, and tackle the day with some Christmas shopping and lunch. I arrive back home around 1 p.m. and get a load of laundry done. This brings me to about 3 p.m. It sounds silly, but as much as I was looking forward to being alone all weekend, I was bored and over it by this point, so I figured, hey, I'm gonna grab a bottle of wine and call Sarah up later for some girl time to help my evening go by a lot faster. In the same breath I realize, screw it. I have nobody to cook for or cater to tonight. I'm gonna surprise her in person with a bottle of wine. Into the car I go. I arrive in her area at around 7 p.m., all giddy and pumped up. I know she is going to be absolutely stunned and excited when she opens the door. Let the squeals ensue. Well, as I rounded the corner onto her block, I'm the one who is stunned. There is another car there. My husband's make and model. My heart just drops, but I tell myself there is just no way, and I actually feel guilty and silly for thinking it could be him. It is a common vehicle after all. As I pull up to the house, I can see now it is his car. I am sick. Beyond sick. I can't describe the sinking feeling I felt, as I can honestly say it's the first time I've ever had that feeling. I kept trying to justify an innocent reason for this and I came up empty-handed. Then the anger sets in. I walk up to the door and begin pounding in the way I imagine the police would do in dire urgency. I hear Sarah's footsteps approaching and a confused tone in her voice as I hear her say, I really don't know, I'm not expecting anybody. Our eyes meet as she peeks through the little decorative diamond-shaped glass of her front door. She says, as she heel spins to walk away but back again. I tell her to open the goddamn door. At this point my husband has heard me through the front door and I hear him groan and say something along the lines of, this can't be real. Did you tell her to come here? How did she know? Etc. She opens the door, and he acts as if I didn't just hear their exchange of words on the other side of the door. I demand to know what the heck this is. She is completely stunned and stands back with her hand over her mouth as he fumbles his words, and tells me he stopped there before leaving for his trip to plan a surprise New Year's party for me with Sarah. As if. I quickly tell him that's absolutely not true, and such thing can also be correlated via any other source of communication that does not include spending the night with my best friend. I look past them to see what looks to be the aftermath of a romantic dinner for 2 on her dining room table, and a cozy blanket on her couch with 2 glasses on the coffee table. I am in tears at this point. He has the nerve to then accuse me of having looked through his messages and being the sneaky one. I am baffled. I tell him to get his crap and get out of there. He refuses, citing he still has to leave for his work trip the following day. I tell him absolutely not. Get your things and we are getting a room for the night to discuss this. He reluctantly agrees. He asks me to wait in the car for him, which I say no to. I begin to yell at Sarah as he scampers around collecting his whatnots. She is apologetic but tells me she hopes this is just a bump in our friendship, and we can work past this. What an absolute joke. This is not a bump, but an entire mountain that has been placed on and crushed any remnants of our friendship. Fast forward to finally getting to a hotel with space. My husband confesses, as if I needed a confession, to having been with her a few times in the past, but maintaining a long-distance relationship with Sarah for the past 4 years. 4 years? I am absolutely breathless. He subsequently cancels his work trip and ends up coming back home, where we spend most of the next day arguing before our son comes home that evening. We keep it hush around him, but he can definitely tell we are on the outs. This brings us to now. The following Friday. We have spent all week arguing, talking, crying, and just trying to figure out where to go from here. We always had a loving relationship. He says he just got bored but has developed deep feelings for Sarah and vice versa. He begs for forgiveness daily and has made a point to cut ties with Sarah to try and save our marriage, but my trust is non existent, and my hurt-o-meter is redlined. I've been too ashamed to share this information with other friends, especially friends Sarah and I have in common.
As a teenager, I got a girl pregnant. 15 years later, I met her and she's the best thing to ever happen to me. When I was a teenager, I dated a girl for a brief amount of time. Nothing can really be said about the relationship except that she broke up with me out of the blue with no explanation. I didn't think much of it and went on with my life. 15 years later, I'm 32 and just found out I have a daughter. Turns out, the reason my ex broke up with me so long ago was because she was pregnant with my kid. She recently got charged with a bunch of substance charges and told the police I could take care of her because I was her dad. I was really surprised and I felt so many emotions all at once. I'm not going to lie, I was mostly skeptical about this whole thing, so I got a paternity test done and the results came back positive. With that, my daughter is coming to live with me now. I don't have any other kids or a partner, so this is going to take a lot of adjusting too. I do have dogs though, so maybe that can be used as a starter bonding moment for us because I don't know how to deal with this. After talking with her social worker, I found out that my ex neglected my daughter, so she isn't going to be used to being taken care of or having structure, which will be a big adjustment for her. She said for her own sake, I have to take things slow. I need to be patient with her and just show her love and support even if she doesn't want it. While all the legal proceedings were still happening, I got a room all ready for her in my apartment. The day I officially had to take her, she was very quiet in the car, and when I showed her the room, she didn't show much of a reaction. I told her that I know this is very new for both of us, so I know it's going to take some time to adjust. She has been through a lot from what I can tell. She's very underweight, and is not used to constantly having meals. I let her know that she could get food from the kitchen whenever she wanted, but that seemed to overwhelm her, so I put a snack bin in her room. I make sure to have all meals at a consistent time so that she knows a meal is going to happen. So far it's working and I can see she's thankful for it. Slowly, her body is getting used to it and she looks somewhat healthy. I've heard her waking up screaming in the middle of the night from nightmares. She hasn't told me what they're about and I don't expect her to yet because I know she doesn't trust me. I have comforted her though, and I'm in the process of finding a therapist for her. On a more positive note, I got her to open up enough to find out some things about her. She loves my dogs and we take them on walks together. She's pretty silent during those walks too, but just spending time with her is enough. She's also smart and loves to read, so I offered to take her to Barnes & Noble to buy some books she'd like to read. She also likes to play basketball, so I bought her a basketball and a small hoop for her room. I want to make her really comfortable here and make her see me as her dad because I already see her as a daughter. Before her, my life was pretty dull, so I have her to thank for bringing some positive change into my life. The process has definitely been tough for both of us, but I wouldn't change it for the world. She's adjusting pretty well to her new life, both personally and academically. She's gotten A's on her tests after being at the school for less than 2 weeks. I have high hopes for her future and hope she can persevere despite all the traumatic things she's been through. She honestly deserves the best the world has to offer. I said I wanted to celebrate her getting those high test scores, so we went out to eat ice cream. It was a beautiful day and honestly a core memory for me. But things took a sad turn when a mother came in with her 2 young daughters. You could just tell the girls were having fun with their mom and all 3 just clearly loved each other. My daughter got really quiet and kept staring at them. I didn't want to pry, so I didn't say anything, and I hoped this would be a moment where she would open up to me about her hardships because it would show that she was finally starting to trust me and letting me into her life. It wasn't until we were on the drive home that she said sometimes it's hard seeing girls have a good relationship with their mom. She said she got jealous because her mom and her never did any of that. She started crying and I tried to reassure her that I was going to give her the love and support she never had. She thanked me but let me know she wanted to be left alone the rest of the night. It was hard seeing her cry, but we made progress that day because it was the first time she had allowed me to see her cry. It is also difficult to know that even though I'm trying really hard to be a good dad to her, she will never know her mother's love. I wish I could fix that, and it sucks that I can't because she didn't deserve to be neglected and possibly abused. 2 months after that, her attitude changed. She was being really rude to me and I wasn't holding that against her. She had a right to be angry, and if she wanted me to be her punching bag, that was fine because anything was better than her bottling her emotions up like she used to do. We got into an argument the other day and she ended up telling me some very personal stuff I'm not going to share, but I will say she had a very rough start to life. I was trying my best to comfort her and it seemed like she was having a panic attack. After she calmed down, we were just sitting in silence and she said,
You know you're pretty good at the whole dad thing for being a newbie.
I laughed and responded with, Thank you. Being your dad has been enjoyable. She got quiet again for a while but then spoke up to say,
Thanks, Dad.
That made my whole year. I love her so much. My substance addict brother destroyed my room and refused to help me clean it, so I made his life hell for 10 days. My meth-addicted older brother, Mac, was a man who thought he was going to make it big in the music scene because of all the different substances he was willing to do. He thought being on ACD made him play as well as Jimi Hendrix because Hendrix did ACD. This is relevant because in one of his many substance-induced rampages, Mac was convinced his USB microphone was in my room. So Mac knocks on the door while I'm away, convinces my dad that he was recording in my room and left it in there. But it was never in there. He was never there. My dad was so wrapped around Mac's manipulative finger that he never questioned anything he did. I kept careful inventory of my room because my parents and siblings would steal from me all the time and try to use my bedroom as a storage room for all sorts of things. Thinking back, his excuse was likely just to steal from me like the rest of my family did. So Mac goes into my room, tosses the place like out of a movie scene during one of his notorious benders. He flips the mattress. Empties out every dresser drawer onto the floor. Nothing was left the way I had left it. After all was said and done, I had to spend 3 days cleaning and reorganizing my room because of how badly this tweaker destroyed everything of mine. Things were broken, clothes everywhere, bins and boxes dumped on the floor. It was like a tornado had rampaged through a trailer park in Iowa. My dad had heard all of this going on and did nothing. I showed my dad the mess. Dad just shrugs at me and says he's in his 20s. What do you expect me to do? How about effing stop his strung out butt from tossing the place? How about at least calling him to have him clean up his mess? I replied. He practically ignored me and before walking off said, he was looking for his microphone and you need to just deal with it. Going to my mom was no different. Mom was so terrorized by him that she wanted no part of anything involving him because she felt unsafe. I can't blame her. He became aggressive when challenged on anything he did wrong. Realizing nothing was going to be done by my parents and this was no matter to call the police over since dad let him in the house, I did exactly what my dad said and dealt with it. I tried to be diplomatic at first and asked him to come clean up my room. He laughs, makes fun of me, then says I needed my microphone. I asked if he found it. I know he didn't because I knew where it was. Over in my dad's garage. He never answered. I scooped up the microphone to hide it even better. Stuffed into the rafters of an old shed on the outskirts of the property, inside of a large PVC pipe stacked up with other pipes. It's where he went to smoke his meth sometimes, so I knew he wouldn't be looking for it there due to the paranoia of being caught by any of us. I gave Mac one final warning text to clean it up or else. He again made fun of me, crybaby beach. How difficult is it to clean your own room? You're just a lazy piece of crap. The last one really torqued me because he was a thief and did everything he could to get out of work. Later that night I decided to do my best Tom Petty impression. I leave my parents' house to sit around a campfire at a friend's house. I waited until I left because then Mac couldn't find me, neither could my dad. I knew my dad was going to simp for him and defend him yet again. I waited until Mac would have been nice and comfortable at home. I lit my first cigarette of the night and promised myself and nothing would stop my ensuing plan until I smoked the whole pack. I had recently learned how to SMS bomb. At the time, you could add the same contact into your SMS app multiple times for a group chat. I believe it was up to 30 on the phone I had. For every one SMS I sent him, he received 30 in total. I spent hours sending messages to Mac. If I had a cigarette in my mouth, I was text bombing him. I spent from 9 p.m. until 4 a.m. sending Mac thousands upon thousands of text and picture messages. I have now dropped a Hiroshima-sized text bomb on the fancy BlackBerry he was so proud of buying a week or two before this. For anyone wondering, it was simply a copy and pasted text that said this stops when my room is clean and a picture of the mess he had made. I alternated back and forth. This took very little effort and left him inundated with notifications every 1 to 3 seconds. This effectively dosed his phone into oblivion. It was locked up tighter than a New York subway car. He could not call, text, or even open anything on his phone other than my text messages. Dad starts frantically calling me around 1 a.m. I ignored it. Then my mom calls me and leaves a voicemail for me to call him. Worried it's an emergency, I call Dad back. Dad picks up the phone, screaming at me his phone is locked up and he can't use it. You need to stop this right effing now. I replied he needs to go and clean up the mess he made of my room right effing now or just deal with it like I have to. The argument continues for a while longer, the entire time he's defending Mac tooth and nail. Eventually I broke it to my dad that there was nothing I could do to stop the flow of messages and notifications. He hung up and never brought it up again. After the smoke had cleared I found out Mac had his BlackBerry locked up for 10 days. He wasn't able to respond to a job offer and wasn't smart enough to leave an alternate contact. The job went to someone else by the time Mac was able to return their call. He was still going to be stuck at the job he loathed for a while longer. His phone plan had a monthly SMS and data limit that I absolutely destroyed. The month's bill was over $300, I want to say closer to $400. His living, my lying wife had a multiple year-long affair and the lawyer told me I would lose everything if I divorced her. So I spent years perfecting my payback. My revenge began by discovering my wife Carrie's infidelity after 14 years of marriage and 3 kids. I saw a text appear on her work phone for just a few seconds that would forever change my life. It was a message that was sexually graphic and had no business being on anyone's work phone. It was on the lock screen and the sender's name, Perry, was visible. The world stopped around me. I just froze. My first thoughts were what the hell was that about? It's her work phone. That kind of message gets people fired. Then it hit me. Was Carrie having an affair? It's amazing how the brain works. I suddenly started remembering a lot of things Carrie had done that seemed odd but I'd either dismissed them myself or immediately accepted her explanation. She was always walking out of the room to answer a call or return a text and claimed that it would violate HIPAA. She was a nurse, if I overheard her talking about a patient. I accepted this because education has similar privacy laws regarding students. I'm a district school admin. She would sometimes come home with the faint smell of cologne on her clothes and claimed it was from helping to move male patients. Again, I accepted this at face value, but it always struck me as odd how it seemed to have the same scent of cologne. Once the proverbial barn door was open, I started seeing a lot of things that I'd missed before. Our love life in the bedroom had cooled off considerably, which wasn't helped by her having to leave the house at odd hours to fill in for other nurses that called in sick. I also recalled where I'd seen the name Perry before and a call to the hospital confirmed he was a doctor there. For the next week or so, I was walking around in daze trying to put all of the pieces together. One of our kids had left a book in Carrie's car, so it was an excuse to visit the hospital. My kid went up to get Carrie's car key, I talked to a nurse in the lobby and joked about how work phones seem like a blessing, but all they do is put you on call 24 hours a day. This led to her eventually telling me that the hospital was too cheap to give cell phones to nurses, so only high-level executives got them, which didn't include Carrie. With pretty much everything confirmed, I took some personal time off the next day to talk to a divorce lawyer. The news she gave me was horrible. We lived in a community property state with no-fault divorce. I made more money than Carrie, she'd been the primary caretaker of the kids, and we'd been married for more than 10 years. Basically, if I filed for divorce, I'd be screwed. Lose the house, pay alimony, she'd get a huge chunk of my retirement, and I'd pay child support for the next decade unless I was lucky enough to be awarded joint custody. The worst thing she told me was that it didn't matter that she cheated. It didn't matter. I was crushed. There was only one person I could trust with this kind of information. She was a fellow teacher that had also made the jump to administration, but was stuck at a school site. Let's call her Anne. Anne had been married at 19, but her marriage was annulled when her husband got some other woman pregnant. Since then, she'd focused on her career and we'd found we were kindred spirits in a lot of ways regarding K-12 education. I talked to Anne. She said something to me that changed my whole mindset. If you don't like the hand you're dealt, change the deck. I realized I had two problems. I made more money than Carrie and she had more time than me to be the primary caretaker of the kids. The second issue was actually kind of easy. At every district office, there are jobs that are fast tracks to higher positions and there are jobs that administrators suffer through. One of these dead-end regulatory positions was open again. I sat down with our district superintendent and asked about being transferred to that position. At first he was shocked, but I told him that it was my time to take one for the team and it would fill a hole in my admin experience. He agreed. It was really just crunching numbers with no personnel or student interaction, so I could set my schedule, even take a laptop home and work there. With my new free time, I began taking the kids to school, picking them up from school, and taking them home. I'd help them with their homework, make dinner, etc. while the end goal was to become their primary caretaker. I can't explain how much I really enjoyed taking a more active role in their day-to-day lives. My salary hadn't been reduced, so I needed to find a way for Carrie to make a lot more money than she was in current nursing position. I remembered Carrie being mad that her supervisor told her in the future, bachelor degrees will be worthless and everyone will need at least a master's degree. Carrie had worked hard to get her bachelor's and that supervisor's comment peed all over her hard work. I talked her into starting a master's program. I told her that since I had a much more flexible work schedule, I would keep taking care of the kids. She was reluctant at first, then I said, you could have every evening free to study or go to class, whatever you want to do. I saw her eyes immediately light up, probably thinking that she could spend more time with Perry. To make sure she was actually completing her master's courses, I paid her tuition and fees directly to her university. It was going to take her between 2 and 3 years to finish. Those years were rough at times. I could tell every time she was rushing off or coming back from seeing Perry. There was an excitement or sense of satisfaction in her eyes that just wasn't there when she was doing her coursework. I had to either smile or pretend I didn't notice. My temper got short at times and I found myself in arguments over petty nonsense. A couple of times I almost blew the whole charade, having to bite my tongue and apologize rather than scream insults at her that she deserved. Anne remained my confidant through all of this. I'd recommended her for my previous fast-track position and she joined me at the district office. Anne was qualified, hardworking, ambitious and only needed her foot in the door to impress the higher-ups. I even got a few pats on the back for recommending her after she impressed everyone. Anne and I started our own affair. It wasn't some hot-blooded, passionate romance, but two friends giving each other what they need. Without Anne, I wouldn't have been able to maintain the charade of being the oblivious cuckold. But when Carrie would come home smiling after spending time with Perry, I was able to bear it, smiling back because I had my own lover. After 3.5 years, Carrie completed her master's and was promoted at her hospital. Her salary went up substantially and was now higher than mine. When the kids and I made her a congratulations dinner, I made a joke about her being the breadwinner for the family and she laughed, joking back I should be a stay-at-home dad now. A month later, I went back to the lawyer and told her the financial situation had drastically changed. With these new facts, she drafted the petition and filed it. When the kids were with my mother, I had Carrie served. The deputy knocked on our front door and I let him in, pointing at my wife. He asked her name and then handed her a copy of the divorce petition. With the deputy standing there, I told Carrie I knew all about her affair with Perry. I told her to go be happy with her Dr. Lover. She screamed at me, tried to lie, and then made the mistake of rushing toward me. The deputy stopped her and warned her that women go to jail for domestic violence too. He suggested she pack a bag to stay somewhere else. Carrie left after I promised not to tell the kids about her affair. I didn't tell the kids. But I told my mother, who told my sister, who told her kids, who told their cousins, my kids. It took a few days, but eventually the kids knew that dad was divorcing mom because she had a boyfriend. In the end, the court granted the divorce, giving me primary custody of our kids. Because I was already their primary caretaker, I kept the house with the promise I'd refinance to buy out Carrie's half. She was ordered to pay child support, and I used that fact to negotiate with her to give up any rights to my retirement if I bought her out. I was able to refinance my home, and with a little money borrowed from my parents, I bought our Carrie's community property interest in the home and in my retirement. The day she signed all the paperwork with my lawyer finally ending any possible financial obligations to her was the happiest I'd been. I felt like I could finally breathe. I celebrated with Anne, who'd been my rock through all of it. I'm not ashamed to say that through the years I'd cried many times in her arms. Anne and I would eventually marry. She got promoted to a higher position and I was convinced to take back my previous position at the district when my youngest child reached high school. Carrie and I got along well after the divorce. We took the kids to family therapy and worked out this co-parenting thing. For a few months, she took a beating from the kids about why she needed a boyfriend when daddy was there all along. Between the kids and the therapist raking her over the coals, I didn't have to say anything at all. Carrie missed a lot of time with the kids because of her now legitimately busy work schedule, and I actually felt bad that my kids were missing time with their mother, so encouraged them to talk to her on the phone instead. When Carrie found out that I'd proposed to Anne, she congratulated me. I told her it's okay for her to marry Perry too. She got sad. She told me that Perry had started seeing another woman, a younger nurse at the hospital, because with her new position, she didn't have time for him, and when they did get together, she wasn't fun anymore. My ex-wife, the woman who'd cheated on me and destroyed our marriage, was looking to me for sympathy. I had none to give. What I had was years of anger and frustration. Years of knowing some other man was sleeping with my wife. I'd lost weight from not being able to eat. I'd suffered hypertension and had to confide in my doctor why it wasn't the stress of my job. I had to listen to my dentist complain about how I was grinding and listening to him tell me I'd need dental implants if I kept up. There were times when I had to be intimate with Carrie to keep up the charade, only to lie that I wanted to use rubbers to remind us how we used to have intimacy when we were dating, or because I might have a bladder infection, then go take a test anyway and wait for the results before seeing Anne again. But in the end, it was all worth it.
My aunt insulted my weight during Thanksgiving dinner and made me cry, so I outed her adulterous husband in front of the whole family. My aunt is someone who genuinely doesn't like me. I know it sounds weird to say that a family member does not like you, but it's true. My aunt places the majority of her self-worth on her appearance, her physique and beauty. She has spent over $50,000 in cosmetic surgery in order to look exactly the way she wants to. She exercises every single day, taking no days off, and is the queen of eating disorders, refusing to eat anything deemed junk food, even on holidays. She is rail thin, and really believes that everyone should live the way she does. Her obsession with her looks and appearance is so extreme that I have seen her explode at her husband for getting her cupcakes to celebrate their anniversary. Maybe this is why he cheats on her. The only reason I know is because their 4-year-old, my cousin, is someone who I'm very close with, and she has told me before that she saw her daddy with not mommy. I have kept this a secret, however. I don't feel like I should be the one to blow up a marriage. Besides, the man's marriage is miserable. If the affair comes out, he won't be too devastated. I think my aunt is just deeply insecure, and that's why she pushes this lifestyle onto others, especially me. You see, I'm a tomboy of sorts. I don't place much attention on my looks. I don't care for expensive clothes and makeup the way she does, and I am sort of chubby. Nothing major which affects my health, but I can admit that I have a tummy. However, my health is completely fine, and I do exercise. I just enjoy food way too much, and the trade-off for me of having a little belly but enjoying food the way I want to is without a doubt worth it. Well, my aunt does not see it this way. She thinks I'm not elegant and feminine enough, believes that I should be thinner like a woman should be, and insists I wear more makeup, as well as get more manicures and pedicures. It's a nightmare to deal with, honestly. It's especially frustrating when the holidays come around, and this is for 2 reasons. 1. She always has to comment about my weight, and no amount of my parents telling her to cut it out will make her stop badgering me about the fact that I'm a tomboy. The second reason is that her gifts are about as insensitive as I can think of. I don't remember the last time that she got me something that was not a makeup set, some sort of diet or healthy recipes book, or anything along those lines. It really does annoy me, but it's almost a weird tradition at this point. Well, this Thanksgiving was when she had really crossed the line. Recently, I was diagnosed with diabetes, and this has completely changed my life around. I can no longer enjoy the foods I would like to as much as I want to, have to constantly cater my life around being diabetic, and have even slumped into a somewhat depression because of this. Thankfully, my parents have been amazing throughout this. They are really supporting me in every way they can. We all knew that this Thanksgiving was going to be quite tense with my aunt there. She was definitely going to comment on the fact that I'm not having dessert, and that is when I would have to ultimately tell her what has happened. Due to this, my parents decided to try get ahead of the curve, and tell her themselves with my blessing to do so. The day before Thanksgiving they drove down without me, and when they came home they told me that my aunt seemed receptive to this news, and did not make a big deal of it. This really surprised me, and I almost actually believed her. When Thanksgiving came around the next day, we all gathered at our house to celebrate. The dinner went without a hitch for the most part. My aunt did not make any comments about me. She did talk about herself a lot, which is expected. However, she is an egomaniac. Apparently she got another plastic operation done. Since the last time I saw her, which was just 3 months ago. Everything was fine until we had dessert after dinner. My aunt simply couldn't help herself. Her and I were the only people not eating dessert, and she looked at me and told me, "All the years of eating like crap caught up to you, huh? I told you this was going to happen, bet you regret it now." Now, I'm not one to cry, especially in front of my family, but this day was a reminder that my life was never really going to be the same, and so I was already feeling quite down. Add to that, my aunt's awful comment about it made me break down and cry. My parents shot up and asked her what was that all about. They told her not to do this and she just can't ever listen and not comment about her weight. She tried to defend herself, saying, "I mean, I'm not wrong." This caused my dad to explode even more and tell her to get out. Her husband just laughed the whole time and backed up my aunt with sly comments like, "Come on, she's just speaking her truth." I had managed to stop crying fairly quickly, and I yelled out to my aunt and uncle as they were leaving, "All the years of being superficial and caring so much about how you look didn't stop your husband from cheating on you, did it?" She turned around with a confused look, and I saw my uncle freeze in his tracks. My father, not wanting to deal with the upcoming mess, just ushered them out and told them not to contact us until they are ready to apologize. My narcissistic ex-boyfriend poisoned me over a LinkedIn bio, but he accidentally gave me a golden ticket to Harvard. Basically, my high school rival was a guy named Nathan. He and I were super similar. We were co-presidents of the same clubs, had similar academic portfolios, had done research papers together, and we spent a lot of time together. So despite being known as academic enemies, Nathan and I were actually in a relationship for 2 years of high school. Now those were years that I really valued and enjoyed. Nathan took pretty much all my firsts. But, once the time for college applications rolled around, Nathan dumped me, saying that he needed to focus if he wanted to get into Harvard and he couldn't be distracted with me. This made me upset for a number of reasons, mainly because he called our 2-year relationship a distraction, but also because Harvard was also my dream school, and I didn't appreciate the way Nathan just assumed he would get in over me, even though he would be the final reason I hacked my brain and managed to get in. And so, just like that, our academic rivalry was back and we each had something to prove. But I never could have prepared myself for the lengths Nathan would go to, just to beat me. Everything went downhill at this debate competition, a 4-day international conference in DC that we had been preparing for all year. This was the final big competition before college applications were due and our final chance to prove that we belonged at an Ivy League school. Everyone was tense, not just me and Nathan, and everyone wanted to win. But wanting to win will never excuse what Nathan did, even though I'm incredibly grateful for it, because his stupidity changed my life drastically for the better. It first started on the train to DC when Nathan changed seats so that we would be next to each other. It was a little awkward, but I thought that this was just Nathan's way of trying to apologize for all the unpleasant tension between us, so I let my guard down and didn't think anything suspicious of it. For the remainder of the trip, Nathan tried acting like my friend. That train ride, he treated me like he used to. We spent time studying together, laughed over some inside jokes, and we even practiced our speeches in front of each other. I started to think this competition would be good for us, to make him realize that we shouldn't lose our friendship over just school, and dare I say give our relationship another shot. By the end of the train ride, things almost felt normal, and it felt natural when Nathan showed up to my hotel room the next morning with a cup of coffee for me. Him getting me breakfast while I was running late really felt like progress, especially since that was something we used to do for each other when we were still together. It even made me start daydreaming about even being in a relationship with him again. All felt right in the world. That was until I noticed something had changed in me. About halfway through the first day of the conference, I felt like I was in a hyper-focused mode, as if someone had filtered out the white noise in my brain and just left the sharpest, most productive parts behind. When I gave impromptu speeches, I found myself having extra time to think as if time was going by slower than usual. And when the time for questions came, I asked the most precise, detail-oriented questions that highlighted major flaws in my opponent's arguments. Unfortunately, Nathan fell into this category. Somehow, I was beating everyone in the debate room, including him. By the second night, it was obvious that I was going to win. I was just hoping this wouldn't cause a rift in our friendship because we were just starting to become close again. But all my concerns melted away because the next morning, Nathan came to my room and gave me a morning coffee to prep me for the day, even though he was somewhat agitated. So 3 days in a row, Nathan brought me coffee, competed against me during the day, and chilled at night. But on the 4th and final day of the competition, everything was even more tense than usual. My anxiety only grew when Nathan failed to deliver me a morning coffee. I tried not to think anything of it initially because it could have just been a coincidence, but then, Nathan didn't show up to the debate at all. He completely skipped the final day of the competition. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. I ran to his hotel room the second the committee session ended. After banging on his door for 5 minutes straight, he finally let me in, but the moment I stepped inside, Nathan exploded at me, asking how it was possible for me to be performing so well. I was going to make some lighthearted joke because I genuinely had no idea how I managed to improve so much in just 4 days. Everything that happened during this conference put all my other work these past 4 years to shame, which was saying a lot since my senior year was the best I had ever performed. But I never got a word out, because Nathan immediately went on a chauvinistic, narcissistic tangent and revealed something truly insane. He had been trying to sabotage me from the very first day. Apparently he felt that this competition was the perfect thing to round out his application, and he really wanted it on his LinkedIn biography so he could call himself an international debate champion, and so he had played dirty to try to win. What I thought was old friends catching up over a cup of coffee was actually Nathan giving me lace coffee to make me lose the competition. At least that's what he thought. Nathan told me that he had tried to intentionally buy me coffee with psychedelics and legal psilocybin alternatives in it, hoping that it would make me loopy, distracted, and confused. But I knew the coffee he had given me was the opposite of psychedelic. If anything, it was focus enhancing, and I felt ultra productive. I asked Nathan for the exact coffee brand he had bought and looked it up to confirm what I already knew, that the psychedelic coffee he bought had nothing to do with psychedelics. It was simply a mushroom coffee fusion blend. It was called Clarity Brew, and from the name I could sort of understand why Nathan might think that it was for a psychedelic type of clarity, but the actual product description made it clear that this coffee was a blessing, not a curse. The mushrooms Nathan had thought would hurt my chances of winning this competition were chaga mushrooms and lion's mane, which botanists will know are just cognitive power banks for the mind. I respected Nathan wholeheartedly until this point, but never in my life did I think that he would be capable of such a low-level Sigma IQ move. And even though Nathan had basically tried to poison me with this coffee, it worked so well on me that once I was done yelling at him, I took the Clarity brew with me to confiscate it, only to bring it all the way home so I could continue using the coffee until the end of senior year. That was when I discovered that the coffee didn't just make me more productive, it gave me long-lasting energy and naturally minimized the jittery effects of caffeine. Nathan had basically bought me super coffee in an attempt to drag me down. To no one's surprise, I won the competition and was later accepted to Harvard. Nathan was not. We still text sometimes, and he's apologized a lot for what he did. I've even started connecting him to a few people at Harvard to help him out with some research opportunities because I just want to be the bigger person here. Hopefully one day, he'll be the same way. Edit. Okay, wait. Thanks so much for all the comments. I think you guys are right about him just using me for networking. I've decided to block Nathan and cut contact with him permanently, because you're right. He lost the privilege of being my friend the day he tried to drug me. Though yes, I still do take Clarity brew.